My crops were getting pretty big now. It shouldn't be long before I'm swimming in coins from the harvest, Scrooge McDuck style. After carefully feeding my little money-making beauties, I thought it was time to tackle the rock problem head on. So off I went like a member of a chain gang, hammering rocks until my farts were reminiscent of a catchy blues melody. It was shortly after a weed massacre that I discovered a geode embedded in one of the rocks. This would be worth taking to the blacksmith to have it cracked open and looked at. I soldiered through the work, determined to get it finished this day. All the rock smashing and weed hacking had paid off. I'd cleared a path to the southern entrance, relieved the big pond of its mineral guardians, and bagged me a few seeds to plant in the process. Nice. All this sweat-inducing work had rendered my arms useless for the remainder of that day. So after depositing my gathered materials in the chest and my sap in the cell box, I slumped towards my house and collapsed in my bed by 2 p.m, ready for a fresh start tomorrow. The following day, I woke up immediately and flicked the TV on. There was a fortune teller feeding the masses statements relatable to anybody through the medium of television. With his powers, he sensed that a man from Stardew Valley had just tuned in. His following statement was that the spirits felt mutual today. The day is in your hands. Hardly worth the televised prediction. After feeling bloated with my serving of bullshit for breakfast, I ventured outside, and oh lordy lordy, my morning glory had returned. Parsnips aplenty awaited in formation. Rays of sunlight highlighting their mighty girth, they stood proud, anticipating their destiny, knowing that I would be the catalyst. I checked my mailbox, inside laying dormant a letter. It was from Joja Corp. Goosebumps encased me, as I immediately jumped to the conclusion that this was about the damage costs of the turd that I'd not so graciously placed on my former desk. To my relief, it wasn't. It was actually regarding the removal of a landslide that they had caused by drilling near the mountain lake. They state that their operation was entirely legal, and that their responsible stewardship of the local environment is their top priority. I stopped reading at that point. I was naive to believe that I'd never hear from Joja Corp again. It's a difficult task to evade such a massive company. They have their fingers in a lot of pies. Still, they didn't take my spirits that day, for the parsnip harvest would leave me on a high. That is, until I saw a sad-looking Lewis outside the community centre. I approached him, armed with questions about his peeping Tom antics, but I was curious as to why he was stood before such a decrepit-looking building. He told me how this place had once thrived, and explained that the youth of today's unwillingness to engage with the community has left it abandoned. My ears perked up when he mentioned Joja Corp and how they are encouraging him to sell the land so they can convert it into a warehouse. I didn't like the idea of that, but was soon reassured when he said sentimental value was preventing him from selling it. Although if anybody else purchased the Joja Corp membership, he would. With a verbal invitation, I felt obligated to enter the building. Ignoring the stranger danger screams in my head, I followed him inside. Yep, this was definitely his residence of fiddling operations. I could tell by the way he felt it necessary to point out the evidence of children being in here. Then out of nowhere it appeared. A creature of a terrifying slimy green appearance made its presence known before my very eyes. It vanished as soon as Lewis looked in its direction. My well-being was then questioned. I told him I saw something, but he claimed there may be rats. Again it appeared before me, and again it vanished when Lewis turned to view it. This was no rat. The mayor said I'm worrying him. Had it not been for all the questions assaulting my brain at that moment, I'd have given him a few good f***ing reasons why he's worrying me. He then headed home, but I wanted to stay. I needed to know what I saw. I searched the rooms. Behold, another monstrosity of another colour appeared. I attempted to grab it, but its form dispersed before me. That's when a golden glow drew my sight. A strange tablet of sorts, engraved with markings beyond my comprehension. I needed to get out of there, away from the monsters, away from the Fiddle house. Sunlight was a blessing when I left. Normality. I recalled the reason I went into town that day. The geode I'd collected. I wanted the blacksmith to open it. So that's where I went, greeting a young man by the name of Alex on the way. He didn't want to seem to talk much. His brother Vincent and I crossed paths outside the blacksmith's. He was one of the child names Lewis mentioned back at the Fiddle house. His mother advised him not to talk to strangers. That's good advice, only maybe a little late. I didn't want to know. The smithy opened my geode for me. Inside, a petrified slime. I had no current need for it, so I decided to donate it to the archaeological office, who didn't show an ounce of f***ing gratitude. So off to the general store I went, stopping outside of Lewis's house briefly, staring at it with pity, if nothing else. I winked at the soon-to-be-mine handbag as I entered Pierre's store, purchasing a bean starter and cauliflower seeds before heading to the river for a spot of fishing to clear my head. I saw a kid named Sam attempting a kickflip. Attempting being the key word here, because a kickflip wasn't the desired result. After catching me some algae and a smallmouth bass, I'd had enough and made for the one place I felt truly safe, Fu Farm. Although Evelyn, the walking corpse, stumbled in my path on the way, saying I could call her Granny if I liked, so Granny Death it was. I just wanted to go home, and arriving there never felt better. Planting my seeds was soothing for my soul, soothing enough to grant me the motivation to build a super sweet path outside my house. I placed my parsnips and other sellables in the cell chest, this time excited about the result, and was ready for the warm embrace of my bed.